Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's quite all right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Hope all is well. Welcome to our town hall engagement, L.E.A.D. And the purpose of this session is to discuss your fiscal year explained. As the City of Delray Beach is in the midst of its fiscal year 2025-2026 proposed budget process, we've made the town hall experience to this effect an integral part of the proposed budget calendar. My name is Terrance, your city manager. I wish to also acknowledge a few other individuals here on behalf of the City of Delray Beach before we delve into the details of the presentation regarding your fiscal year explained. Before doing so, I think it's cogent to acknowledge that for the third consecutive year, we're making this opportunity available because City of Delray Beach genuinely feels and believes that we should do as much as we possibly can to offer an environment of knowledge and transparency for residents and stakeholders. This program is likewise being made available by way of our partnership with our contractor PrimeStar, who's making this opportunity available via live stream, which is the case at this time, as well as for future YouTube production as well. So for that reason, ladies and gentlemen, we hope to make a connection with any and every stakeholder available so that we can do our utmost to explain what our recommendations and considerations are as they pertain to the current state of financial affairs and budget policy considerations currently being advanced. Before I facilitate the formal presentation, I'd like to acknowledge a few individuals who are here on behalf of the City of Delray Beach to also support the cause. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge Commissioner Thomas Markert, along with his lovely wife, Sarah Markert, who's with us this evening. Thank you for being here, sir. I'd also like to make an additional special introduction. The role and function of the city manager and chief financial officer, of course, is to do as much as we possibly can to advance good financial and budget stewardship. I wish to therefore introduce to all of you all an individual who's been with the City of Delray Beach for a relatively short time. As a matter of fact, his first day of service was Monday, December 9, 2024. That means he's been with us for a total of 7 months, 2 weeks, and 1 day. I would give to you all Mr. Henry Dachowitz. Chief Financial Officer Henry Dachowitz, as I've stated, been with us since December 9, 2024. A little bit about him. He joined the City of Delray Beach after having served 5 productive years in the city of Norwalk, Connecticut. Previous professional experience includes Treasury and Financial Management leadership positions in Nassau County, New York, as well as Wayne County, Michigan. Detroit, of course, being the county seat of Wayne County, Michigan. So he has some pretty significant experiences that relate to the issues and challenges that are experienced here in Delray Beach, Florida. His educational background includes an undergraduate degree in accounting from Brooklyn College, as well as a Master of Business Administration and Finance and Strategy from the Harvard Business School. He's also a certified public accountant, having previously enjoyed licensing in both New York State and Maryland. So I think the City of Delray Beach is most fortunate to have him on board, and he and I have been working tirelessly with one another in his office, out my office, back and forth throughout the day at any given time, despite my keeping a full calendar, to make sure we're on point in terms of making solid, cogent recommendations as it pertains to the upcoming fiscal year. Sitting next to him is, in many respects, another partner to help us advance the cause in this regard, Director of Public Works, Missy Barletto. Missy Barletto. In Missy Barletto's capacity as Director of Public Works, she and her team are also responsible for facilities, capital improvement facilitation, working collaboratively with all departments to help us get to the absolute best place possible, which is why we've included her as part of the package relative to this presentation to highlight what the anticipated capital improvement program focus will be beginning fiscal year 2025-2026 and beyond. Other individuals joining us today representing the City of Delray Beach, we have Assistant City Manager Jeff Forrest with us. Jeff Forrest. Chief Technology Officer Jay Stacy is with us as well. Jay Stacy. a new addition to the executive leadership team, having joined us as of Tuesday, January 21st, 2025, Director of Neighborhood and Community Services, Ms. Jerry Pryor. She's with us as well. Other members of the community, Marty DeRoe, you are actually a member of our pension board, so I think it's appropriate to acknowledge you, Mr. Richard Lucas and others, people we've interacted with in the community. But again, although we appreciate everybody who's able to join us here physically today, it's really important that we highlight all involved in the community, thus making the opportunity available for streaming live via our partnership with Primestar. And thanks to the collaboration they enjoy with the Department of Communications, these opportunities are plentiful and available. Likewise, I'd like to offer special acknowledgement to Director of Communications Gina Carter, Kimberly, with the Department of Communications. Thank you for your work in helping us get to this place and making such opportunities continuously available. Much appreciate your technical support, leadership, and guidance. Likewise, let's proceed. So it's important to highlight the composition of the aggregate budget for the City of Delray Beach, Florida. The City of Delray Beach, Florida currently forecasts for the upcoming fiscal year nearly a $350 million total fund operation. I emphasize operation as opposed to total fund budget, and we'll get into that during the course of the presentation. The City of Delray Beach for the upcoming fiscal year, an anticipated $201 million towards general fund. We'll talk a lot about that, and what you'll realize in most municipalities, general fund is perhaps the largest source for resource expenditures and revenues associated with an operations budget. We have also in place $42.7 million based on an internal services fund, enterprise fund of nearly $80 million, much of which functions as the business practices of any municipality. In the case of the City of Delray Beach, that principally encompasses the Department of Utilities. So the Department of Utilities are ratepayer-based, and when we pay our utility bills every month, that is what's in place to support the enterprise fund in that regard. We also have a small debt service fund of about $4 million, which is actually coming to a close, as well as special revenue funds. We'll talk a little bit about what this all means specifically as we continue to offer the presentation and education to this effect. I'll talk a little bit about the general fund. In the case of the City of Delray Beach for the upcoming fiscal year, anticipated to be approximately a $201 million revenue stream. General fund supporting police, fire, your daily operations, parks and recreation, much of public works, and a lot of the rudiments associated with daily operations of a municipality, separate and apart from your enterprise fund activities such as a water operation, stormwater, etc. We'll talk a little bit about that, but I think it's important to highlight in the context of the millage rate. Many people have offered their thoughts, comments, and observations as to millage rate policy as it relates to collection of revenues for the general fund. While property taxes are not the single source for a general fund, it is the predominance of it. And in the case of Delray Beach, Florida, we simply decided to offer a brief millage rate history over the last 10 years. This is cogent because, of course, while engaging with the Mayor and City Commission with respect to recommendations moving forward, it was appropriate that we do provide a summary of what the operating millage rate is over the past 10 years. Because, of course, in the process of making recommendations in terms of a proposed millage rate, it's important that we do as much as we possibly can to demonstrate our efforts to achieve efficiencies in operations. This is necessary also because of the fact that every municipality in the United States virtually is experiencing inflationary pressures. I've coined the phrase some years ago that's actually now widely used in the industry, known as municipal rate of inflation. We have personnel costs, equipment costs, capital costs, utility operational costs, a host of commitments that necessitate good financial management, good fiscal stewardship. Oftentimes what occurs in municipalities is that city managers, chief financial officers may make a recommendation on the millage rate to keep up with the municipal rate of inflation. In the case of the City of Delray Beach, via our leadership, Our effort is to do as much as we possibly can to identify efficiencies in operations, share that with the City Commission before we offer any specific recommendations regarding a millage rate. So what's referenced for 2025-2026 proposed is a millage rate of 6.1611, which essentially means $6.16 for every $1,000 of property valuation. Likewise, that's a slight adjustment from the current millage rate of 5.9063. However, the 6.1611 millage rate is significantly lower than the preceding 10 years, as you can see in the bar graph before you. It was as high as nearly 7 mils, but there's been a steady decrease over the past 10 years. And interestingly enough, the current millage rate of 5.903 was based on the commitment offered a year ago to proceed with a rollback rate position. A rollback rate is nothing more than the definition of the millage rate based on the same amount of general fund revenue or property tax revenue that was experienced the previous year. So in essence, the city of Delray Beach made the decision a year ago to not take advantage of increases in revenues, increases in property valuation. We kept it flat, and therefore there was a slight decrease in the amount of property taxes most residents of the city were at liberty to pay. Moving forward for the upcoming fiscal year, given the position of 6.1611, there are a number of variables that took that under consideration, notably the fact that the City of Delray Beach's Fire Rescue Department will be transitioning from a 24/48 operation to a 24/72 operation, which essentially means 24 on, 48 off is the current structure, and that's been the case for the preceding years. As of October 1st of this year, the operation structure will be 24 on and 72 off. Much of that was a function of previous union negotiations and, in many respects, a function of the current marketplace. Boca Raton, Boynton Beach, other municipalities in the immediate area have made that transition fairly successfully. One other concern was the fact that the City of Delray Beach was expected to maintain a 3-person emergency medical service position. In essence, as this all relates to the proposed budget process, this results in a higher expenditure position. Quite frankly, it netted expenditure commitments of well over $1 million, and that is so because, of course, we were able to identify other efficiencies in operations so as to not adversely impact the general fund position. It's interesting, ladies and gentlemen, since I've been on board, I've had the experience as not only your city manager, but as also a fellow resident and homeowner in Delray Beach to engage with individual residents, other stakeholders, etc., regarding property tax bill. And there is a prevailing thought amongst a number of people that all property tax bills paid to the Palm Beach County property tax collector all goes to the city of Delray Beach, Florida. So, Mr. Moore, you all reduced the millage rate last year, this coming year, whatever the case may be, yet my bill is a lot higher. Well, that is simply, long last, because of the fact that only 33% of an average resident's total property tax bill, it goes to the city of Delray Beach. In the case of what's anticipated for the upcoming fiscal year, a total millage rate of 18.2, nearly 18.2 mils is anticipated. And the largest of the taxing authorities involved to this effect is actually the school district of Palm Beach County, representing approximately 35% of one's property tax bill in Delray Beach, Florida. Delray Beach is a slight second at about 33%. However, there is still a significant amount paid to Palm Beach County at 25%, and the remaining to various other special districts, Florida Inland Navigation District, for example, South Florida Water Management District, and others. It's a valuable lesson to remind residents and stakeholders to recognize that that is the structure and that much needs to be done to continue to advance expectations relative to fiscal policy. Nevertheless, we represent the city of Delray Beach, Florida, and we are the first point of contact in terms of responding to issues, concerns that may be experienced in any part of the community, as well as providing the daily services that people have grown to expect and appreciate. Yes, sir. So, Mr. Cannon, and before I offer that opportunity, what we can do at this point, ladies and gentlemen, is make this more of an interactive engagement. I may require the assistance of Mr. Henry Dachowitz, if that's okay. So, if that's permissible with everyone here, I think that would be a productive approach. On that note, Mr. Paul Canning, you are at liberty to proceed. Yes, sir. Do we have a mobile microphone at all? Give us a second so that we can make this part of our broadcast, Mr. Cannon, if you don't mind. We'll go ahead and open up the floor. So an additional footnote while we're awaiting the microphone, the roving microphone, if you will. Based on an average property valuation of $447,000, myself and Mr. Dachowitz were able to calculate as part of the budget consideration, homeowners would pay about $2,754 in ad valorem taxes to the city of Delray Beach, based on that valuation. Some less, some more. Also, it does make a difference relative to homestead exemption or not being a homestead exempted entity. As a resident and stakeholder in Delray Beach, I have homestead exemption because this is my home, this is where I live, and in the case of Delray Beach and many other municipalities throughout South Florida, that's not entirely the case. So there is some swing in that regard, and understandably so. But the important message in this regard is that we only represent about 1/3 of the aggregate property tax bill. Mr. Cannon, we have a microphone for you.
So my question is, understanding that the general fund for the city funds public safety, like the police department, for example, would I be right in assuming then that the proportion that goes to the county, that proportion also funds the county sheriff's office?
That is correct. That's exactly right. So
arguably we're paying for a police service that we don't really take full advantage of. Of course, they'll be there as a backstop should something serious happen, but in general operations, we're paying for a police service that we're not really getting any true value from. Would that be a true statement?
One could offer that as a fair statement, Mr. Cannon. Yes, sir. So we're part of Palm Beach County. Palm Beach County does provide services that municipalities by and large do not. However, as an incorporated municipality, Delray Beach is it as far as your core services. Police, fire, rescue, other activities, etc. We are it, and not much interaction in terms of daily activity, Palm Beach County, fire, rescue, Palm Beach County sheriffs, etc. We do enjoy mutual aid agreements with these organizations should there become a catastrophic need to bring them on board to assist us in terms of public safety and other matters. They're available in that regard. Other services, a few other services that are not provided by the municipalities in Palm Beach County but are provided by Palm Beach County are public health activities and programs. We have what's called the Florida Department of Health. Palm Beach County Department of Health works closely with them in that regard as well. So there are a few services, but by and large, your observations and analysis is correct. The city of Delray Beach provides the core services. Something occurs in your home, your neighborhood, whatever the case may be. Who will you call? The city of Delray Beach. You contact Palm Beach County, they'll likely refer you to the city of Delray Beach. That brings me to an anecdote, if I may. By and large, west of Military Trail is unincorporated Palm Beach County. However, they have Delray Beach addresses, much of which is a function of the United States postal system. Because of their route structure, etc., they've been designated Delray Beach, Florida addresses. Not only in Delray Beach, Florida, but in other city manager roles and functions I've experienced in other parts of the country, they would think they're part of the city of Delray Beach. So I've actually had residents of unincorporated Palm Beach County with the Delray Beach address, unincorporated Delray Beach, West Delray Beach, it might be affectionately known as, would contact the office of the city manager levying a complaint. And we would therefore get their information. We try to be as responsive and attentive as we possibly can. And we come to find out within the course of the conversation that they're not actually a Delray Beach resident. Ma'am, sir, you're actually located in the unincorporated area. The entity that would be responsible for servicing you is Palm Beach County. We'll be happy to provide you their contact information. Oh, I've been here for so long, I didn't realize I was not part of the city. It's really an interesting dynamic, and a big part of our role and responsibility is to do what we can to explain those differences. So your question actually made me think about that experience, because many of us in our capacities as executive leadership team members of the city of Delray Beach have had that experience. The office of the city manager probably more than others. So you're welcome. Any other questions regarding the tax bill position? Yes, you can. Mr. Carter, if you would be kind enough to provide the microphone to Chief Financial Officer Mr. Henry Dachowitz.
Thank you. I've worked in 2 cities and 2 counties. There's usually not a duplication of effort. So in Nassau County, we had Nassau County Sheriff's Office, and cities might have police departments. The cities that did not have police department contracted with the county to provide the services. So it's not like we're doing the same thing that they are, and there's a whole lot of duplication and waste, if you would. I would just venture that based on theoretical. Actually, I guess you could point to anything, but try to have a demarcation of who's responsible, as City Manager just indicated.
Any other questions regarding tax bill position? The next presentation offers a summary of City of Delray Beach taxes levied by property type. So this is really a nice illustration of how property taxes are levied by type. Oftentimes we hear from the business community, the assumption may very well be that they pay more taxes than the average resident. A larger home may pay more than the business. It's a mix of scenarios and variables out there with regards to the matter. Residential that are non-homestead, interestingly enough, represents a significant part of our levy. So 43% of taxes levied by property type are from non-homestead property owners in Delray Beach. Interestingly enough, this means that a large number of our residents have homes elsewhere where they are perhaps homesteaded. This is likewise a second home, and in many municipalities throughout South Florida, you will find this to be the case. This is very common and not a big surprise. However, taking a look at the metric of 43% is a bit of a surprise. I know when I first came on board nearly 4 years ago, getting my bearings and analysis together with regards to property tax policy, I thought that was really interesting, and I had to remind myself, well, Terrance, you're back in South Florida. So that is commonly the case. Second to that, of course, is residential homestead. People like me, Mr. Marker, others, who are permanent residents of the city of Delray Beach, this is our permanent home. So that's a significant outcome in that regard. Commercial represents about 16% of property levies in our community. And interestingly enough, there's enough of a metric available to reference vacant lots in the city of Delray Beach. 2% of tax levied by property types is a result of vacant lots. So that's an interesting footnote as well. Little industrial and other. Industrial is somewhat limited in the city of Delray Beach, Florida, because of land use structure being what it is. There's not a lot of opportunity for industrial growth or economic development in that regard. Opportunities exist for commercial, and part of the opportunity the current city commission and future city commissions will have to consider is any ability to do what they can to address land use policy. And that's a big dynamic in many municipalities in South Florida, because city commissions, planning and zoning boards wrestle with the question of what is highest and best use opportunities for land use development. That takes under consideration taxable valuation as well. Any questions or thoughts in this regard? Mr. Dachowitz.
Thank you. When I was in Norwalk, I supervised both the assessor and the collector for the city. And what was explained to me is there's a certain amount of taxes the city must collect in order to pay its bills and balance its budget. The assessed values is just a method of allocating that cost. We could do it per person, but instead we use the value of the homes. Now, when assessed values go up uniformly, it doesn't matter. You're going to get the same percentage. What we had in Norwalk after COVID, during COVID, you have a lot of businesses who are not, people working from home. So the values of those properties went down. And in Connecticut, we only assessed all the values every 5 years. So about 2 years after COVID, we see that the value of the commercial properties went down. But we had all these people from New York who were migrating to Connecticut, but there were many existing homeowners who didn't sell because they said, I have a 3% mortgage. If I sell, I'm going to have to get a 7%. So you had big demand, low supply, the prices went through the roof. And that's what assessors use to determine the property values. So we had a very tough situation on that assessment because the commercial and business properties, where normally they're not the residential. If they're paying a nice share, that's good. Their percentage went down, and the residential went way up. And so you had not just assessed values went up, but there was a shift from commercial to residential. I think here, what I've seen has been a nice increase in assessed values for the last 10 years, and it's been equal on commercial and residential, but there are dangers out there every once in a while.
Thank you, Mr. Dachowitz. Ad valorem tax revenue projections. So to accompany an observation that Mr. Dachowitz just shared, the city of Delray Beach over the past 10 years has experienced increases in property valuation, enabling the city of Delray Beach, combined with the ability to identify efficiencies in operations, to keep expenses as low as we possibly can while maintaining levels of service. And I emphasize the importance of maintaining levels of service because, of course, elected officials have set that expectation. Property taxes collected have doubled over the past 10 years. About a little less than $60 million 20 years ago, coming up on $116 million for the estimate for the upcoming fiscal year. However, ladies and gentlemen, not only in Delray Beach, but throughout South Florida, throughout many municipalities of the United States, believe it or not, this does not align with the municipal rate of inflation. Thus, the need to do what we can to identify efficiencies in operations to keep costs at a minimum to the extent that we can while striking a balance to maintain level of service position. So the forecast for the upcoming fiscal year, revenue forecast that is, $116.8 million for 2025-2026. Mr. Dachowitz.
I ran some numbers. This is a nice set of 10 years worth of data. But it's hard to understand. It was up 10%, it went down 5.1%. How do we evaluate it? So there's a calculation called compound annual growth rate, where we take the first number and the last number, and you say, okay, that's been the change for 9 years. And it sort of averages those growth rates. So what's fascinating to me is the taxable value, the 9-year compound annual growth rate, is 9.33%. As I said, healthy increase in assessed values, the value of your homes are going up. On the property tax revenue collected, the 9-year compound annual growth rate is 7.83, a full 2% lower. So what it shows is, although the values of the homes are going up, the value of the tax revenues that we're collecting is going up at a slower rate. So I look at that as municipal efficiency, where we work very hard to keep the expenses in line and not go up as high. It's almost like if your income is going up 9.3% and your expenses are going up 7.3%, you're a little bit ahead of the game. And I think that's where we are here.
Thank you, Mr. Dachowitz.
Welcome.
Any questions, thoughts, comments, or observations? Very well. As committed in the early part of the presentation, the interest is to offer here a summary of general fund revenues. As stated a little while ago, Delray Beach's predominant source for general fund revenues does involve taxes. So out of a $201 million forecast, nearly $131 million of that comes from ad valorem taxes. We talked a lot about ad valorem tax policy, why we are where we are in that regard. And other categories include permit fees and special assessments, intergovernmental revenue, charges for services, miscellaneous revenues, other sources, and other sources to be continued. So there are a variety of funds that support the general fund operation. And a notable example regarding charges for service includes parks and recreation fees, for example. Let's say an individual may have an interest in visiting the Pompey Park pool. The new facility coming out of the ground soon, we'll be able to celebrate that. There are charges for the respective services. It cannot be available for gratis. Therefore, we do what we can to offer a minimum rate structure to be able to enable to make those services and opportunities available. Once revenues are collected from those fees and charges, they are incorporated into the general fund package. So again, what's forecast for fiscal year 2025-2026? $201 million in change. Only about $131 million of that comes from the general fund, which actually supports the notion that efficiencies in operations go a long way in terms of us striking that balance to maintain levels of service. Mr. Dachowitz.
I would add, you should note that the taxes are 2/3 of our total revenues. There's an eternal struggle. One part is we charge everyone who lives here. That's not by head, it's by value of the house, for all the services that we render. On the other hand, it's by user, okay? So you have a user fee when you go to the park, or you pay a penalty, a judgment or a fine if you did something wrong. So 2/3 for general support of the operation of the city versus 1/3 where the users who get the benefit are paying a little bit more. Seems like a good balance, okay? Just reasonable.
Thank you, Mr. Dachowitz. Any questions, thoughts, or observations, ladies and gentlemen? Thank you. Now, of course, we have expenditures, general fund expenditures, which is essentially a summary of operations that are supported by general fund revenues. We have the City Commission, of course, the Office of the City Manager, Department of Finance, the Office of the City Attorney, the Office of the City Clerk, Department of Information Technology, Department of Human Resources, Department of Communications, Police Department, Fire Rescue Department, Department of Neighborhood and Community Services, Department of Development Services, which of course is your planning and land use operation of the municipality. Cemetery, interestingly enough, although there are fees and charges associated therein, in a previous slide I talked about the aggregate category or the separated category for fees and charges. Much of that takes up the cemetery operation as noted. The Department of Public Works I mentioned a little while ago, including its engineering division, parking facility. So interestingly enough, whenever a resident, stakeholder, or visitor comes to Delray Beach, in any of the garages, the metered parking, whatever the case may be, revenues collected via those services are actually included in the general fund as well. Special events. So the great special events that are sponsored and administered by the City of Delray Beach, Florida, are a function of the general fund expenditure activity as well. Independence Day, fireworks, parks and recreation, it's all supported by the general fund. Other recreational facilities, of which we talked a little bit about in terms of specific examples, the various parks and municipal facilities that provide programs, is a function in this regard as well as transfers from other user departments to help cover the expenses that are aligned with the general fund. Let's say, for example, the fleet division of the Department of Public Works. Portions of the general fund actually goes towards supporting that operation based on the level of use by any given department. Typically, your highly fleet-dependent departments such as police, fire rescue, public works, they contribute in that regard, and thus that constitute a transfer to support that operation. And we've made some policy changes over the last couple years to make that as a sustainable environment as we possibly can. Mr. Dachowitz.
I would just, in summary, I'm a numbers guy, so I look at the numbers. You look at police at 57 million and fire at 50 million. That's about 55% of the budget, 200 million. Okay? So you have 25% for fire and 30% for police. We love our public safety. It costs a lot. And that's just part of doing business. That's what the citizens want. You know, safe cities are just ante and table stakes to get in. I then look at Parks and Rec. We love that. That's our recreation. And we've got two line items, 14 million and the 6.9 million. So again, we're looking at about 21 million for the Parks and Recreation. That's what we're spending our money on. First to be safe, then to recreate. Okay? And then I look at the other important support functions. IT is $6.5 million. You then have Public Works at $8.3 million. And what was the other one? We got engineering. But those are the big dollars. So when you think about the budget and you put it into big blocks, you can't get away from it. And we work scrupulously hard, Missy will tell you, on trying to limit the budgets of each thing. What are we doing? What are the functions? How much does it cost us? And you look at benchmarks. But I think coming from, I'm the outsider, I'm still new, less than a year, I think we run a pretty efficient machine. Police and fire, we have to compete with the neighboring towns. I'm not sure on a blank page I would agree with such high expenses, and I come from the Northeast, but this is the cost of living here, and we have to do it. And I think we juggle to balance the taxes with the functions we're getting and based on what's productive.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also wish to briefly draw your attention to your far left column, percentage change. Your right, rather. My left, your right, pardon me. Percentage change. Areas of city manager, finance, human resources, development services, cemetery, engineering, other recreational facilities, in which you have decreases in expenditures from the previous fiscal year. Several times via this evening's presentation, Mr. Dachowitz and I discussed the fact that we do what we can to identify efficiencies in operations so as to lessen the burden to the extent that we can while maintaining level of service expectations. Those columns, the percentage change columns, are therefore an excellent opportunity to reference what efforts have been made to achieve efficiencies in operations in terms of actual dollars. So this is why it's important to showcase general fund expenditures by department, because in some cases where they cannot be helped, increases municipal rate of inflation does apply. In a number of other instances, we've been able to achieve a number of efficiencies in operations to get to the best place possible. Any questions, thoughts, or observations here? This formally concludes my part of the presentation. However, I'd like to summarize for you ladies and gentlemen and those viewing via live stream and via YouTube in the future. The proposed budget process, much of this has been accomplished. Last year, a commitment for the city of Delray Beach was offered that we would begin the proposed budget process a little earlier. Despite the fact that the proposed budget is anticipated to be adopted via first hearing September 3rd, 2025, and September 15, 2025, we actually began engaging with the City Commission back in March. So we've been at this for 5 months now, a little bit over 5 months, to offer as much detail and granularity to help the City Commission understand the rudiments as to why we are where we are financially, budget policy considerations, to work collaboratively to identify efficiencies where they might be available, as well as any other opportunities for project, program, and daily operational expectations. So much of this has been accomplished, and as I stated in the early part of my presentation, the town hall meeting for the third year in a row we began back in September 23, July 2024, now July 2025. This is an integral part of the proposed budget process to provide residents and stakeholders with an opportunity to learn about the budget process, what it means to the community, what it means to individual property owners, etc. Likewise, we referenced at the very beginning of this slide, Town Hall meeting being today, July 24, 2025. Of course, we had a meeting 2 days ago in which the policy position of a millage rate of 6.1611 was adopted by the City Commission, enabling us to submit that material to the Palm Beach County Property Appraiser for respective processing. Truth in millage, trim notices will likewise be sent to individual taxpayers, property owners, to advise in advance what the anticipated tax structure will be for the upcoming fiscal year. Very intricate part of the process, and thus the attention offered as part of this evening's presentation regarding millage rate policy. First hearing, September 3rd, September 15th. Second hearing to adopt the final millage and budget. So much work has been accomplished. However, there will be continued opportunities to achieve a balanced budget outcome, and we've been able to demonstrate a number of scenarios as to how a balanced budget is to be achieved on a preliminary basis. I'm likewise very appreciative of the City Commission for their work, trust, and support in helping us get to the absolute best place possible and having an aggregate understanding in terms of why recommendations are being made. Millions of dollars in efficiencies in operations, ladies and gentlemen, have actually been identified in the process, reducing the need for us to make drastic recommendations in terms of millage rate adjustments. The 6.1611 position is a function of commitments and obligations that have been previously made by the City of Delray Beach. Nevertheless, I'm proud of the fact that we were able to successfully identify efficiencies in operations to keep that at a minimum. With that, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the formal presentation on my part. Mr. Dachowitz, thank you for chiming in, sharing your objective knowledge and expertise based on previous experiences, demonstrating to the residents and stakeholders as to why you are, in fact, a good fit for the City of Delray Beach. At this time, I would like to open the floor for any specific questions, thoughts, observations any of you all may have at this time, followed by a presentation by Director of Public Works, Missy Barletto, relative to the anticipated capital improvement program. Yes, ma'am. Mrs. Carter, if you would, please.
Hi. I will start by saying that I'm not sure this is the right forum for me to ask this question, but if it's not, please let me know. I'll be happy to direct it to a better time. My question was about Delray Beach and the water treatment. So I know that Delray Beach regularly tests its water for PFAS, and recent data is showing that levels have reached more than 7 times the safety threshold for drinking waters in parts of Delray. Is there a plan in the budget to address water treatments or making sure that we have safe drinking water? I don't know if I missed that somewhere. Thank you.
That is applicable. It's actually applicable to the upcoming presentation on the capital improvement program. However, the short answer is simple: development and construction of a new water treatment plant facility. I would therefore encourage your attendance at the August 12, 2025 regular City Commission meeting, in which the necessary revenue bond transaction process will be initiated for the City Commission so as to begin the approval process. That is highlighted and underscored via the upcoming presentation by Ms. Barletto. And the PFAS issues, actually, in all fairness, we began the process not long after I came on board to address and remedy that. I talked a little bit about the Florida Department of Health in the early part of my presentation as far as the county involvement, and commitments were made back in November 2021, literally 3 months on board, to execute what's called a consent order to demonstrate ways in which infrastructure improvements can be implemented to help alleviate that concern. The City of Delray Beach was actually given a total of 3 years to get those dynamics squared away. It was accomplished in 2. So I think we've done a fairly decent job of advising those concerned, the community, the world, of the good work underway. The long-term aggregate answer involves the new water treatment plant facility. As we've shared with the Commission and the public at large, Delray Beach's water treatment plant facility is about 63 years old, having been operational since 1962. That represents it being one of the oldest water treatment plant facilities in the state of Florida. And given the importance of water, water quality, all associated dynamics, we are finally at a point in which we can make that happen. So the new facility, we currently expect that to become open and operational in 2028. So much work has been accomplished in that regard. So, Ms. Barletto, your commentary regarding the new water treatment plant facility should be somewhat abbreviated in response to the lady's question. So thank you, ma'am. Any others? Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. And those of you who may be participating via live stream or for upcoming YouTube broadcasts of this event, I appreciate your time and attention as well. However, at this time, let's give it up for Miss Missy Barletto, Director of Public Works, who will enlighten us with respect to the capital improvement program, and from that point we can conclude.
First, we'll do this. All right, good evening. Now comes the fun part of the presentation. I will not be saying 6.1611 ever in my presentation. So I wanted to start out by showing you the capital improvement program budget is not the same as the city's operational budget, which Terrance and Henry just covered very clearly. That is very dependent on ad valorem taxes and our general fund. Most of the funds that come into the capital improvement fund come from other sources, either from enterprise funds, from permit fees, from in lieu fees, from grants from the state and federal government, and from those kinds of things. I wanted to start out by showing you that our overall capital improvement budget is $412,650. I say that wrong every single time. Out of that amount, the area you see in green there is predominantly what our utilities department will be spending in the coming year on a new water treatment plant to begin to address those PFAS issues, and on updating various things within the water and sewer network. One of the other things that brings this number up more so than in other years is the beginning of the Parks and Recreation Department's construction of Pompey Park facilities, which is a very large project. We'll start construction this year on our Northwest Neighborhood project, which is a very, very large neighborhood improvement project. I'll talk more about all of those things later on in the program. Of the Public Works budget, that's not just one or two really big projects. That's a lot of smaller projects that come together to create the infrastructure to make your lives better. Okay, so I can't see this slide, but I will tell you that this is a list of the highlights of all of the things that are new in this year's budget. A new police department. Oh, Henry's going to be my backup singer tonight, too. So some of the things you see up here, we're going to be working on some of our parking infrastructure. We're continuing to do playground updates throughout the city. The building division at City Hall has had substandard working conditions for a very long time. We're going to be working on improving those and bringing forth different ideas, from renovations to City Hall to potentially adding another building at City Hall to improve that situation and create more working space for all employees at City Hall. We talked about the Northwest neighborhood improvements. We have some improvements for the Southwest neighborhood as well. We have roadway projects that are included, that are funded by state dollars that pass from Florida Department of Transportation through the Palm Beach County Transportation planning agency to the city to create some of these things. We are going to be building a new police department headquarters, another very, very large project, and water treatment plant, Marine Way, and I'll talk more in depth about some of those projects later in the presentation. So before I was talking about by department how we divvy these funds up, these individual funds that are not our general fund are where the dollars come from in order to fund these capital improvement projects. The Special Projects Fund includes a lot of different things. It includes when a developer comes into town and has to remove a lot of trees, and they can't replace those trees or replant those trees in another place, they pay what we call an in lieu fee for the privilege of being able to remove those trees. And those fees go into a particular fund that then the city uses to pay for tree giveaways and improving our tree canopy throughout the entire city. Some of the other things in that fund are sidewalk in lieu fees, which we use to fund our Americans with Disability Act transition plan. When you see sidewalk being built all over the city, because Delray Beach has a stated goal of becoming a very walkable city that requires sidewalk, then a lot of those are paid for out of that fund. The recreational impact fees and the municipal golf course, Lakeview Golf Course, those are enterprise funds that people pay for with their user fees. When they use those facilities, those fees go into a fund that then pays not only for the operation of those facilities, but also for improvements. The Stormwater Utilities Fund is an assessment that also shows up on your tax bill every year, but it's not based on the value of your home. It's based on how much of your property is not available for water to soak into the ground, right? So how much you contribute to stormwater runoff into the system is what you pay your assessment based on. So here's a picture of the water treatment plant. Terrance said I have to be brief now because he already covered most of it. But oh, he really is going to chime in.
We're on camera, so.
I understand. There's a fundamental financial change that we've been making. Historically, we didn't have a lot of long-term bonds. So when Missy and Terrance want to find funds for capital projects, it's often based on these funds that are getting revenues this year, or maybe they're in reserves from a couple of years back. What other governments often do is they issue bonds to finance these projects. These projects are long-term projects. Up in Norwalk, I was building schools that had a 50-year life. Many of these projects are 30, 40, 50 years in life. There's also an equity issue. It says if you take current funds to build a long-term asset, then the people down the road, 20, 30, 40 years, are getting a free ride. Okay? So conceptually, we try to match the term of the asset, its life, with the term of the debt. And that way, some people down the road who are going to get the use pay for some of it. And it's like a house. We want to move in today and live there, but unless you agree to borrow the money and repay, they don't let you do that. So issuing bonds allows us to get the use of those assets over a longer-term period, and the cost is allocated over maybe generations of residents who are getting the benefit. So the start was public safety and recreation. Now, public safety was a general obligation bond, the full faith and credit of the city, and it required a referendum of all the citizens. We agree this is important, and I believe it was $100 million. We're starting to issue that later, and there are IRS rules about when you borrow and you have to spend it. But that's the GO bond. The recreation for golf courses and other parks are revenue bonds. These are from an enterprise fund where the user fees pay all the expenses. So as a revenue bond, we don't say general obligation. The revenues from that facility, the golf course or the pool or park, will pay for all the costs, including the principal and interest repayments. So we had $20 million for recreation. I believe we've issued 10, and we're starting to spend that. And there are other projects right behind it. The most important is that water and sewer fund that Missy will talk about. And we're all teed up. We're ready to borrow the money probably in the next 1 to 2 months. Okay? So just to give you a background on utilizing a different source of funds and having the citizens over time repay that.
So this initial project, this is the water treatment plant. The overall estimated cost for this water treatment plant is about $270 million. In the first year, we'll be doing a revenue bond for $140 million, and then we'll do the remaining $130 million in following years. This plant is going to get started under construction this winter. It will be built at the same location that the existing plant is, and construction is expected to be complete in early 2028, as Terrance said earlier. Are there any questions about the water treatment plant? It's moving from being a lime softening plant to a nanofiltration plant. So as you see inside the main building here, there are a lot of cylinders that are filled with microfilters that the water will be running through, and all of those impurities that are found in the naturally occurring groundwater are filtered out before they go into the distribution system and finally into your tap. So another one that we had talked about was the Northwest Neighborhood, which is a complete neighborhood project. This is similar to the neighborhood revitalization projects that people used to do back in the 1980s. In this neighborhood, there's been some significantly delayed maintenance of the infrastructure. We'll be coming in and doing replacing and repairing everything in this neighborhood, from the lowest water and sewer lines all the way up to the top of the street lights. So this neighborhood is getting a nice makeover, including some very well-needed traffic calming to, as you know, many people will cut from Lake Ida Road across to Atlantic Avenue, which creates an unsafe situation in the neighborhood. So we'll be addressing that. Public safety facilities, as Henry was talking about, the public safety government obligation bond or general obligation bond will be starting on the design of a new police headquarters this year. That's estimated to cost in the neighborhood of $100 million, close to it. We're also using that public safety bond to do some other improvements at some of our fire stations that need new roofs. They need restroom facilities for both male and female firefighters that were not planned for when the buildings were originally built. And they're all going to get a nice little bit of paint, the ones that need it. They'll be spruced up and looking nice. In addition to that, we have our Fire Station 113, which is completed, virtually completing construction. The opening ceremony for that is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. The public is invited. Everybody, please come and see this building that we're just finishing We're very, very proud of the way that it's turned out. It's a very, very beautiful building. And that will serve the firefighters in that quadrant of the city for another 30 years to come. So Pompey Park Recreation Facility, this is another one that's been a long time coming. It's been on the drawing board for a while. We are starting construction now. We're working on developing the what we call the maximum price for the facility, which we'll be bringing back to commission in a month or two. And as soon as we get that settled, then we'll be starting to do construction. We will be keeping the current community center in operation while we build the new one behind it, so we will not be losing any function at Pompey Park. And then as soon as the new facility is ready and we get our certificate of occupancy, we're moving into the new one and we will take away the old one. Nobody has any questions? Okay. So additionally, you may have heard that our golf course is not in great condition. People talk about it on a regular basis. We will also be starting in November or December of this year with a complete renovation of our existing golf course. That is also being done with a revenue bond that will be, the debt service for that will be covered by user fees for the next 30 years. And our golf course is very unique and it has historic aspects, although it's not on the historic register. It has 9 holes of the golf course were designed by Donald Ross, who is a very, very famous golf course designer. The other 9 holes were designed by Dick Wilson, who is also a very, very famous golf course designer. There are no other golf courses around that feature both of these designers in a single experience. So we're going to be restoring the Donald Ross holes to exactly what his original design was. And on the Dick Wilson, we're coming as close as we can to what his original design was. There have been a lot of changes on the Dick Wilson side of the course. While the course is going to be completely closed for a year while we do the golf course renovation, during that time we're also going to give the clubhouse a very much needed renovation. So for those of you who are really attached to the 1980s mauve, visit it before November and say goodbye. So our beach programs, I have this up here because we don't have a lot in the FY25-26 budget for the beach program. And that is because we are starting on major construction projects on our beach this fiscal year. So that's the FY24-25 budget. So very soon in November will be the Army Corps of Engineers will be on the beach starting a new it's partially a storm repair and partially a full renovation, renourishment of the beach. In addition to that, we will very soon be doing taking down the main pavilion at the beach and rebuilding it completely in a more structurally secure way in which it will be good to go for a much longer period of time. Some of the other things we're doing, the fountains and the showers on the beach have all suffered from salt air, just like everything near the ocean does, and we're going to be replacing all of the showers, the fountains, and at some of the beach entrances, we've done such a good job of growing our native dunes back that they're spilling over the edge of the dune and getting into our French drain storm systems that causes them to fill up and flood. So we'll be putting in new benches, taking away the metal benches that are there, We're putting in new benches that are concrete. They go all the way to the ground, and they will act somewhat like a retaining wall to actually hold the dune back so that it doesn't fill the storm drain up anymore. So that is a savings in our operations budget for maintenance for us. In next year's budget, we'll go back to our business as usual, which is mostly just maintenance and monitoring, doing sea turtle monitoring, cleaning up after seaweed and garbage pickup and that sort of thing. So this is a category that often goes overlooked. Our stormwater management system, our storm protection for our residents. Over the years, we have definitely seen increased levels when king tide happens. Many of our seawalls will overtop. We have water that backs up through the stormwater outfalls where it's supposed to flow from the street out into the intracoastal, and instead it's coming from the intracoastal back up into the street because water levels are rising at that kind of a rate. In the coming year, some of the storm projects that we're going to be undertaking are in the Tropic Isle neighborhood. This is one of the very largest ones. In the Tropic Isle neighborhood, this will be the first neighborhood that we've experienced the need to actually begin to raise the roadway above some of the high water levels that are existing out there. So we'll be raising roadways in there. We're improving the stormwater system. We'll be repaving all of the streets, doing some water and sewer. There's some places in that neighborhood where the pipes and delivery systems are very, very old, and we'll be replacing those while we're out there. This is one of the projects that actually has a grant from the state of Florida for about half of the project cost, which is around $50 million for the total project. So getting the state to pony up for half of that is excellent. A smaller project that we have down here, a picture of at the very bottom, is George Bush Boulevard. You can see the engineers call it a bascule bridge. The rest of us call it a drawbridge. But right on either side of it, there have been mangroves that have grown up into the stormwater system. We're going to have to re-engineer a new way to get water off of George Bush Boulevard without impacting the protected mangroves. And we're working on that. And then the other picture on this slide is of a city seawall. So while many of our residents have seawalls that experience overtopping during king tide, the city's seawalls do that too. We've done most of our major seawalls. The ones that we have left are mostly end caps at the end of a roadway. They're tiny pocket parks, but we still need to go in there and make sure that our seawalls aren't contributing to stormwater problems for the rest of the neighborhood. This is probably the granddaddy of all our stormwater projects. This one has been on the books to start construction for a very, very long time. This is Historic Marine Way. If any of you ever watch the news during a king tide event, I promise you, you've seen this. Because as soon as the king tides come in late September, October, November, this is where all the news trucks park so that they can see actual flooding from a king tide event. In the coming year, we're going to begin to replace where this mangrove line is here in the picture. There's actually underneath that, there is a rock revetment seawall that the Army Corps of Engineers put there in 1930. And it's no longer effective at all. So we'll be replacing a seawall in there while maintaining the mangroves. We won't be impacting the mangroves. We're replacing this roadway that it actually dead ends at Deck 84 and the bridge to Atlantic across and on the Atlantic Avenue Bridge. So we're actually going to be taking that roadway and designing it to look like a pedestrian walkway, although it will be plenty good enough for cars to drive on. And the signage at the end will say not a through street, pedestrian walkway. So it's an optical illusion to keep some of the cars. There are many Uber drivers who want to go down to the end of that street and just sit there and wait for their fares to come. So this is something to improve the conditions for the neighbors. The other picture here that is a depiction of the first stormwater pumping station that we'll be installing to the west of the Intracoastal. So we're at a point now where we actually have to start pumping water off of our roadways and neighborhoods west of the Intracoastal. Up until now, all of that has happened on the barrier island that is significantly lower in elevation. But this particular pump picture that you see here, that pump itself is over 6 feet tall, and there will be 5 of them in line in a very deep 20-foot wet well that will be constructed underground between where the city marina is and where Marine Way turns and goes to the north. So that is all a part of this project that also has a state of Florida resiliency grant that is paying for a significant portion of this project, about $20 million of it. So my final slide is really about roadway projects. We have a number of different roadway projects on the books. We have completed the Lowson Boulevard 10th Street project that had a Safe Routes to Schools component to it. We are in construction right now on the North Swinton roadway, where we're building a roundabout in front of the Unity School, and right now we're under serious pressure to get that completed in time for school classes to start on August 18th, and we're going to do it. But we have pressure. So that is under construction. We also have roadway projects going on Lindell Boulevard. There's also serious pressure on the Barwick Road construction project from Atlantic Avenue to Lake Ida Road, because there's a whole section of that that's in front of Atlantic High School that we also have to finish before school starts there on August 11th. But we're doing well, so I'm not worried about that one so much. We have just started on the Old Germantown Road project, which couples pedestrian sidewalks with multi-use sidewalks, which are very wide, like on Lowson Boulevard and on 10th Street, to accommodate both bicycles and pedestrians. And that is the end of my presentation. If you have any questions. Are you coming back?
Coming back. Thank you very much, Ms. Cibarletto, Director of Public Works, ladies and gentlemen. With that, we are concluding our program this evening. Hopefully everyone appreciates the level of activity, engagement, the good work that's underway by the City of Delray Beach. A lot of clarification is being offered with respect to capital project implementation, major initiatives being executed concurrently over the next couple years. The City of Delray Beach will likewise be extremely busy, and fiscal responsibility, sound budgetary practices and management is not only imperative but essential. And part of that mission does involve engaging with the community, sharing openly and transparently what that is all about. Unless there are any specific questions, thoughts, concerns, observations, I'm very appreciative of the support we enjoy of the City Commission, residents and stakeholders of the community, and all others who have a positive and productive interest in our community. So thank you very much for attending. We'll proceed with the budget process as we conclude over the next 2 months. Look forward to a very productive fiscal year effective October 1, 2025. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Take care and stay well.